it.
Did you see a picture?
No.
YouTube is on.
Left the
YouTube is on.
little cover.
Well, I shot at his driveway today, that's all.
I don't know where it is.
Sorry. That's driveway too.
Yeah.
Tore down the house on the corner.
Yeah, did they tear it down? I was gonna swing by and check it out.
Yeah. I assume so. I was there.
I don't, but
Picture.
I think they would know.
Sorry.
I know that they were trying to carefully do it so that they could get the antiques and the valuable things out of the store.
Yeah.
That's
so
sad. I know, it is.
Already.
And they got 2 months yet.
Alright. Well, it's started.
Take good care.
Every issue. Get back here.
(7:20), we begin the Finance Committee of North Olmsted City Council. Today is September 5th. We're in the caucus room. Present are committee members Glasper and Limpert, council members Broussard, Gilchrist, Keenan, Madden, and Scarl, the mayor and the directors of law, finance, each office, safety, service, recreation, and special assistance to the mayor. There are 2 topics on the agenda, one being the transfer ordinance and the other to discuss our financial position. Director Kopfer, do you want to address the transfer ordinance first?
Yes, thank you. And just to make sure, there was an amendment, so there's a version that has an as amended column for one classification into the CDBG fund for grant monies. So if you go through the general fund, I always follow the detailed one that has the description. There was need for additional computer supplies and then postage and advertising and printing. I think that the costs have gone up for the mailing, and I'm sure that the popular annual financial report probably cost a large amount of money because it was a longer paper newsletter, but we've gotten a lot of good comments and feedback from it that it was mailed, so I'm happy that you were able to do that this year. The increase also for furniture and office equipment to try and just bring desk and chair for the new economic development coordinator. I don't know that that was anticipated in the original budget, office equipment for him. In fire, we moved $50,000 to capital outlay. That is for the Station 1 HVAC replacement. That was not considered as partly a part of, but they intend to do administration intends to do a change order for it because it makes sense on how they're handling the roof replacement. I don't know, do you have?
Air conditioner, the unit is just, yeah,
Yes, please.
sorry. The unit is as old as the building itself, and you don't want to put in my last 2 years, we're putting a brand new roof on there, brand new, footers around.
And sealing it.
Right.
Right.
So that way you don't want to take away the integrity of the roof once you fix it. A year later, something might break down in a year. It's working right now, but we don't know how much it will.
Sounds good. What's next, Director?
And then, also bulletproof vests, we've had an increase in, I think more than anticipated new hires and transfers in this year's budget. And each officer gets, a fitted bulletproof vest just for them. So, and the costs have gone up several $100s a vest.
And if I may, the usual annual grant we submit for this, we did not get as much money as we normally do to offset the cost of this.
And then in the building division, we needed additional tablets for the new system for our inspectors. And right now they use computers in their cars, but this will enable them to use tablets. And so we took that out of salaries because of the permit clerk that has not position that they didn't post to retire. And Public Works, the seasonal employees, they were all, but they were budgeted in the general fund in its entirety and also half in the 282 fund. And so we have extra salaries in the Division of Public Works for the seasonal employees. So we were able to utilize them. You'll see it later on where that came in. Oh, actually you already saw it in the police department for the bulletproof vests. And but that's a net increase to the general fund of 0. So we were able to find resources within the fund. The separation pay fund though, that is, it is overdrawn in the budget. We need to add more appropriations for it. You never know if classes or opportunities are going to increase that we need to refund customers. Maybe a class was canceled or what have you, and so we need to appropriate additional funds to accommodate that. State Highway Fund, this is a $100,000 toward the Brook Park Road underpass project for construction. This is an additional appropriation utilizing existing fund, unencumbered fund balance. It is a state highway fund, or a state highway road, Brook Park is, so we're able to utilize these resources for that, and so that is what we're intending to use as part of the Brook Road underpass project costs. And then the street maintenance fund has the $22,000 for the salaries for seasonal. And in the permanent improvement fund, there's $32,820 for engineering, and then construction costs over and above that were the $297,530, so that the whole project was like $397,530. There's signalization charges, which I'll get into in a minute. And then the amendment is that there is a debate whether it was CDBG or CDSG, and if it's CDBG, it needs to be paid out of the CDBG fund. So, so we moved the expenditure out of permanent improvement and put it in down below in the community development block grant fund. So the resources are cobbled together to pay for the Brook Park Road underpass project. And then the additional $28,000 is the signalization project that has been done for a couple years. But ODOT has done this last 2 times that we've done these big projects, where several years down the road, they finally send us a final invoice and Jeff Filarski reviewed it and talked to the people at ODOT and approved it, for payment. And there were funds that were left over, that we had extra in that project, so it went back into the permanent improvement street and storm fund, so, we're utilizing some of those to then pay that last invoice for ODOT. And then we talked about the CDBG fund, and then the Clegg Road Forest Main project engineering costs for $160,000. That was not anticipated apparently in their original budget, but adding the force main and knowing that Clegg is gonna be done next year, I believe, we had to start the engineering process to get that piece of the project together. So that was a necessity, and that came out of existing fund balance as well. And we've been issuing a lot of refunds for returns of deposits for completed projects in engineering, and we feel we're gonna need additional funds in $50,000, which exists in that fund already, that we're gonna probably pay out back to contractors and as such, so we increased that appropriation.
Thank you, Director. What is the amendment?
The amendment is in the CDBG fund, where we're taking the expenditure of the Brook Park Road underpass project, which was in the 297,530 was included in there, and we're taking it out of there and expending it out of the CDBG fund, like a few lines below.
Okay.
Because it's a CDBG grant, and there was debate whether it was CDSG because of the short timeline, but it is CDBG. And that's a requirement.
Okay, other questions from committee? Go ahead, Mr. Lumberg.
Yeah, so what's taken the biggest hit of the decrease to compensate for this that we're concerned about for next year? Like, I mean, we took out a lot of materials and supplies, right? What?
Are you talking about a specific fund?
Well, yeah. Like, what fund is there anything that you're concerned about that, like, we're not gonna be able to accomplish this year as part of the adjustments? Most of this is increased, but.
I mean, really, a lot of we've been able to accommodate some of these because of hiring timelines, attrition timelines. And yeah, it's a combination of contractual services and materials and supplies. And really, it's kind of split.
And then just another question, are we, Mr. Chair, you're gonna set up something on like a revenue update, right?
We're hoping we'll have a little bit of that discussion after this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd also be interested to see like what, like money, interest rates and things like that, like are we making up more than forecasted for?
I did send out the June financial review, and I was gonna add some commentary on that and some charts and stuff.
Okay,
That was in there.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks. Other questions?
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
pass on suspension.
Yep.
Thank you.
Where Director, so the big number is in the retirement, funds and in the Brook Park project. So I understand we've been trying to cobble together resources for the separation pay, I should say, not retirement. How are we looking going forward? I know you said long-term, you think these are gonna drop off, but, you know, we are taking a near $500,000 dive into the fund, so where does that leave us? So I thought this was like a $1 million or so fund in the first place.
At the beginning of the year, there was $1.6 million in the cash balance. We've spent we've contributed $384,000. I think we're gonna contribute $750,000. But the expenditures, have exceeded the budgeted amount.
Right.
And, so we're utilizing existing fund balance. So at the end of June, the cash balance is $1.3 million. So if we spend, what did we have, like
65, so you're saying we'll be down at 800?
Yes. And every year we look at that, to analyze what we need to contribute to make sure that we can meet those, commitments in the future.
Okay. I think I understand we're in the bubble right now and we did a larger balance to sustain that. I think there would be some interest to know what the revolving number would need to be in the future that is most appropriate. Maybe 1.3 or above isn't necessary if there isn't as much separation as there is now, but just be interested in that at a later date. Director, could you talk about a little bit more in depth as to where the funds are coming from for the Brook Park? I understand the CDBG consideration, but where else? What else is not happening? We're just lowering fund balances? Is that?
It's lowering fund balance in the state highway fund, which is limited to only, maintenance and improvements on state highways within the city, so Brook there. But I think that we'll be able to accomplish that as we have in the past. Plus, we have street maintenance and repair funds that are actually the most flexible, and so those are the ones that are more coveted because you can work on any street in the city. The state highway is somewhat limited, so this is a great opportunity to utilize those funds.
Okay.
And then the 150 is CDBG, and then the remaining funds are coming out of the permanent improvement street and storm fund.
Are there any further questions from council or comments from council? Seeing none, I would move to recommend this amended on suspension and ask for a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 2-0. And Director, I saw that your June report had us, if I'm summarizing correctly, up on revenue relative to what we had budgeted, below on expenditures. But we've had a couple of months since then. How are we looking on the revenues since then, if you can discuss that?
I haven't looked at August on a whole basis. I've been focusing on individual line items, so I can't say whether in total we're up or down. But I know that income tax collections from it would have been end of July, August receipts are still below estimates. I mean, below last year, around 4 to 5%, if I'm not mistaken. And it's still in net profit and withholding, and the individual is still elevated.
So we're down 4 or 5 net versus last year, but we budgeted down 12, so we're still
Ahead budget-wise,
significantly
yes,
ahead.
correct.
Okay.
But I can say that, I mean, it's hard to compare to recent years because of COVID.
Right.
Repayment terms and stuff due dates got moved back and stuff, but traditionally, the last quarter, is less individual because people usually aren't paying in the last quarter that much. The withholding, if it's steady, it's gonna stay about the same amount, but the net profits, it can go up if people wanna get increase their deductions on their federal returns or not, but, they've paid out a lot of refunds this year in net profits, so it's anybody's guess where that's gonna lie. So I think we'll be okay, we're ahead of plan, and still end up slightly below last year, but the fourth quarter is the one that it can be, it's our lowest collection period in withholding as well.
Are there any highlights you wanted to mention, Director, about expenditures other than that we're below where we were anticipated being, if that's the right way to summarize it?
We are, but I mean, I think we're running pretty close to the halfway point, so, when you look at all funds, it looks a little better than just general fund, but, there's been years and we're not even anywhere close, so the salary and wages are very close to actual, other than those places that we haven't been able to fill those positions, but, it seems like, our wages and benefits are gonna be tight, and that's where, 75% of our costs are, so, in wages and benefits, and healthcare is up as well. On a side note, income for the general fund, our interest income is astronomically high. I've increased the estimate, I'm gonna increase the estimate like 800,000, which is double what it was. And there's an adjustment that has to be made in advances. So it's gonna be like a $670,000 increase to the general fund estimated resources in 2023. Some of the other ones are, as I said, Mayor's Court is far down, but EMS revenues are doing better than expected and probably are gonna end up a decent amount ahead. And building permits are right now, volume, I'm getting the choke sign. While volume is consistent with prior years, the amount of building inspection dollars, permits are down somewhat, but there's some big projects that could potentially, permits could be pulled and who knows, so, that's what, I'm gonna keep those estimates the same, because it's pretty much a wash once you look at all those.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments from council for the director? Okay, seeing none, we'll end at 7:42. Thank you, Director Cotter. And it's all yours, President.